I once had a new guy at the table that I was DMing for. He was a friend of a friend who had found himself suddenly out of a group, so okay, I took him in. He rolled a barbarian with a great axe and big Conan vibes. Barely any backstory. Anyhow, first session, Conan the Chauvinist makes uncomfortable passes at female characters, suggestive comments, etc., making everyone uncomfortable. After the dungeon raid, Conan the Creep wandered in as it ended. The party goes into town and into an inn to wind down. "I look for a woman," says the guy. I was not going to roleplay a barmaid having a one-night stand with Conan the Cornered, so Wendy the bar wench turns him down harshly. "I follow her into the back alley." "What do you say to her?" "Nothing. I just..." We are 50 seconds into the episode. The session grinds to a screeching stop. Everyone is disgusted. One of my other players, Mary, made an excuse to leave, and she was Amy, another female player's, ride. Session adjourned. Dude disagreed when I told him how disgusting that was. Complained loudly that, "That's what my character would do." Never saw him again. You know, it's a real shame when D&D sessions need to be cancelled, but I think in this case, it was definitely for the best. Time travel with me to 2013. We're all younger, the world is brighter, summers don't suck quite as much where I am. My friends and I have been on a bender lately for playing the lovely cyberpunk RPG, Shadowrun. One of the members of my group says he's working out a game, and he'd like for us to play. Cool, we're in. I'll try and translate Shadowrun terms where needed, but very little needs to be tweaked to understand the horror. Cast of characters. DM, the DM, a really fun player, came up with great characters, but was not versed in running things, as you will see. Myself, the Decker / the Face. I was a hacker, basically. Buddy 1, the Adept, a melee fighter who uses magic in lieu of cyberware. Buddy 2, the Street Samurai. He shot things and made them go boom. DM told us to go ahead and design characters using 500 BP instead of the usual 400, so we had some extra attributes and skills to play with. It was framed as a revenge story. It started at our buddy's daughter's wedding, armed gunmen, Kill Bill the whole thing, we almost died but didn't, and we set out to figure out who has done this. Now to understand why I was optimistic for this game, our DM went hard. He actually pulled out an old laptop of his and loaded with data so he could have hard props and whatnot for everything we were finding. And man, did we find a lot. In fact, we found a little too much, which was probably the first red flag. He wouldn't let us roll to source out what was BS. He was relying on us to figure it out instead. You know, not my character, who was an ex-agent of an organization, but me, who worked part-time at a video game rental store. But I digress. We finally hit on a couple things that seemed promising, and we learned that an orc who was involved in the murder has been seen in a certain part of the city we're working out of. So to make finding this guy easier, I turned to my contacts, all of whom were mysteriously busy, or unavailable at the time. All, 18 of them, including a trusted friend willing to risk his life for you level contact who was apparently on vacation or something with his phone off. Buddy 1 and 2 tried all their contacts, and there must have been a great Groupon for island vacations or something because every single one of them were gone too. But okay, we're supposed to go look ourselves, I guess. Whispers of chugga chugga choo choo circulate, but off we go. There were a couple other incidents along this line, but the absolute BS that made me just be done with the game was when we were attempting to relay information to a colleague of ours. This relay needed to be done in secret, because if anyone became aware we were trucking this information, a lot of people would get killed. I think my memory's a bit fuzzy. But anyway, we went off with this guy. Now, every single time we had tried to talk about this before, and I mean every single time, agents would come crashing in on us. Were we like bugged? Were they omniscient? Was there perhaps an ultra-powerful being controlling everything behind the scenes that just wasn't ready for us to give this information out yet? We were so frustrated that there was talk of quitting, but we decided to give it one more go to cover literally all of our bases. So this time we went over and above. We rented a chopper, the fly type, not the vroom vroom type. We made our way to the helipad, and on the way there, we stopped at a store in the far part of town. A store none of us had ever frequented, and changed all of our clothes to brand new ones to make sure we were not bugged. When we get to the chopper, we went up first, whipped out my comm link, hooked up, and went hard on scanning the chopper and us for any sort of inclusions, bugs, weird programs, security breaches, etc, etc, etc. I went so hard, I spent a point of edge to make any successes explode, meaning they're very good successes. Friends, I have never rolled better. By the end of these explosions, I had something like 30 or 40 hits. It was a number unrivaled. If that had been a gunshot, it would have taken the wings off a fly in Japan from Seattle. Everyone was just staring. We look at the DM and he concedes that the chopper is clear. We are clear. There is no chance we are bugged, monitored, or anything in any way, shape, or form. So up we go, Buddy 2 piloting the thing because we didn't even trust the guy who's supposed to fly it. It's time. We start to drop the information bombs. And all of a sudden, there's another 2 choppers, and it's the same agents. We look at the DM, and not one of us can believe this. The game pauses, because right now, we are mad. We have danced to this tune the entire time, and so far as we can process, we have done everything right. Was it petty of us to do it? Probably, but we needed to know what we'd been doing wrong. He proceeds to claim we missed a bug in our clothes. The ones we changed out of, you mean? No, the new clothes you just bought had them in them. What? That was it. That was the moment we realized that literally we could do whatever we wanted and it wasn't going to matter. The plot would advance at the pace he wanted it to. The 3 of us looked at each other, nodded our heads, and Buddy 2 put the chopper into a nosedive. Such a grandiose amount of damage that there was no chance we would survive. He asked why we did that. We laid out our grievances. There were no harsh words, but he never DM'd for us again, and none of us ever wanted him to. I do understand that if this DM does not have the information leak plotline prepared, I do understand why the DM would try to delay it as much as possible. But once the DM realizes that the party is interested in that plot, why doesn't he start preparing it? That's what I often do. If I see players are interested in a certain part of the game, I start preparing that part. My players have been invested in one of my villains in the game, Cain Miva, who turned out to be Vecna in disguise. Cain Miva, I am Vecna respelled. Anyway, point is, they were interested in that, and so I made that a greater part of the campaign and prepared more stuff for it. This DM has time in between sessions, at least I assume he does, so why doesn't he prepare this plotline so the party can engage with it properly? And look, if it's not enough time, then why doesn't the DM just clarify to the players, hey look, I'm gonna need more time to get that plot ready. Can you give me a little bit more time? Can we focus on another aspect of the game while I'm preparing that? I think most players would be okay with that because most players want to have fun, and a prepared game is usually going to be a more fun one. Or, you know, we could go to the ulterior approach, which is to have clairvoyant agents attack the players every time they do something the DM doesn't want them to. Great! Some backstory, I've been feeling really down lately and thought that some D&D might help to cheer me up. I've been going ham on r/LFG for the past week, applying for every game that didn't conflict with my schedule. I finally found one campaign that wasn't full. It was a DM with 2 friends looking for 1 to 2 more. The recruitment process was easy. Age, name, years of experience, and you're in. I got an invite to a messy Discord server, and the first thing I noticed is all the messages DM was sending about how serious this campaign was. Completely unprompted. There's no fudging at my table. You die, you leave the campaign. No guns, no high AC. I don't know what he meant by that either. No overpowered characters, no min-maxing, no meme characters, no weird characters, whatever that means. No homebrew, and, for some reason, no anime? Okay. One thing that really grinded my gears was only D&D Beyond character sheets, because apparently you can't cheat using D&D Beyond character sheets. I'd usually deny it then and there because I don't really like D&D Beyond, but I was desperate, and characters I wanted to play were in the basic rules, so I agreed. I asked about what the campaign is. I only got a copy and paste from the book's story blurb, no further information. I googled it, and it was some gladiator-themed Chosen One story. I wanted to ask some questions like, will my character fit this seriously serious campaign? But he never answered anything. The only answer I got was when I asked, why do you hate guns? Prompted by a message, no guns, I hate them. The answer I got was, too powerful. Pistol in D&D is like 1d10 damage, but alright. At this point, I got too invested in the craziness to leave. No more players joined except me. It was only the DM, his prior 2 friends, and me. This is called foreshadowing. The game starts. I play Berserk Barbarian. We start in an arena. No player introduction whatsoever. We are immediately thrown into combat. We apparently teamed up since there was no introduction, but we still fought together for some reason. The fight ends, we go back into our gladiator rooms, and 2 other players immediately start working on breaking out. I had no idea what's happening, so I waited it through. Through the chatter I heard, "We're all gonna rush out when the guards open the door." And like magic, soon, a guard just entered our cell, completely unprompted. I just followed along without really knowing what's happening. But you probably have an idea from the post title. There's an escape sequence with 2 players precisely predicting the next ambushes, trap locations, and even the puzzle solutions. For those skipping the paragraphs, this is the part where it gets stupid. We have a final fight with the Ringmaster. I, being a dumb melee barbarian, rushed the Ringmaster with my glaive, which triggered a response from one of the 2 friends. "Why are you attacking him? He has magic armor. You should be fighting his henchmen and leave the master to the sorcerer player." How am I supposed to know he has magic armor? There was no scene description. "It's in the battle description." What battle description? From the other player. "In the book. Did you even read the books?" We were supposed to read something? Oh my god. Just then, I got informed that we were supposed to read the entire adventure module before even playing to know what's going to happen. I was perplexed as you are, dear reader. What followed was a short speech about how useless my character is and how bad the Berserk subclass is. We continued anyway and finished the session after defeating the Ringmaster and leaving the Coliseum. I said I won't attend the next session because I don't find this style of game fun, after which I immediately got kicked out of the Discord server and unfriended by the DM. The search for a campaign continues. TLDR, the people I was playing with were ultra metagaming in a super serious campaign and got angry with me when I didn't do the same. I can't say that I've seen this before because I haven't. I have never seen a campaign where the DM actively wants the players to metagame to ruin the surprise for themselves. I get a lot of fun from discovery in D&D, so I don't understand this at all, but from what I've seen, a lot of other people also enjoy the feeling of discovery and accomplishment in D&D, the ability to create your own solutions to problems. In this game, people are just reading the book, seeing what they're supposed to do, and then just doing that and hoping the dice are in their favor. How is that fun? You may as well just roll a "do you complete the quest" check and then call it a day. Look, if these guys want to play in this style, can't stop them, and I won't. If they have fun, then they have fun, and that's great. But they probably shouldn't expect any new players to stick around for too long. This was several years ago in a Werewolf the Apocalypse LARP. Since I know that most of you won't be too familiar with the system or the lore, I'll be simplifying down a bunch of the concepts that are kind of extraneous to the bulk of the story anyway. I and a group of 2 other friends were invited to join a LARP game being run by an acquaintance of mine, whom I'd played rather happily with in a previous Werewolf LARP. The structure of this game, which was pretty common to Werewolf LARPs, was that there were several packs of characters in a larger group who would each have their individual adventures and such, and periodically there would be these big games where all the packs would get in an area together for big events and such. Let's call the GM of the game Trebor. My 2 other friends we'll call Dan and Brent. Trebor was unusually demanding. He required each and every player to submit a multi-page written character backstory and had house rules that stated that all of our characters would be much less powerful and experienced than a basic starting character as per the published rules. At the time, the 3 of us were kind of suckered into the idea that someone who would ask so much of us would offer some sort of commensurate reward in terms of an engaging game in return. I mean, who in their right mind would demand several pages of background text for each character if he wasn't planning on using it, right? How naive we were. Dan and Brent were not naturally inclined towards writing, whereas I was, so it kind of fell to me to do the lion's share of the writing for everyone. They came to my place, and over the course of like 5 or 6 hours with them sharing their ideas about their characters, I was able to come up with character backgrounds which hit the necessary page count. We all sat down to try and create character sheets which were at least minimally effective in spite of the gross limitations he'd put on us for character creation. Eventually we all got it done and sent it to Trebor. By this point, we were all feeling pretty invested in our characters. We were playing a pack of bone gnars, a tribe of kind of sleazy, urban-dwelling wolves who had interbred with stray dogs and such, communing with the rats and crows and other wild creatures of the city. Over the course of the next couple days, we hit up some thrift stores and bought some costume pieces for our characters and roughed them up for the sake of our characters. We were in. Our introduction to the game was one which Trebor crafted to be pretty dramatic, if somewhat rewarding for us. There was one of these big meetings of the packs things going on, and he hadn't told the other players that we were joining the game. He arranged to meet us outside the game area midway through the game session and lead us in so that the other players and characters could be surprised at the arrival of this new pack in the middle of their proceedings. A pretty cool idea in principle. But in practice, it meant that the three of us had to arrange our day around this game and only actually get about an hour and a half of game time, arriving as we were when it was already more than halfway over. So, as the first game session impended, we met Trebor, who led us to the area out in the woods where the game would be taking place. Along the way, he told us about a conversation he'd had with one of the other players in this game who had asked them if there was an overall story. He had laughed with remembered disbelief at the very suggestion that there might not be a story. Ha! What an absurd idea! Of course there was a central narrative which he uses to guide the events. Having heard that going into this first session, I was reassured at the idea that nothing would be arbitrary or meaningless. It was a good thing to be able to believe that for a very short while. Shortly thereafter, Trebor meets with three of us for our first little adventure with our pack. A big part of the mythology of this game revolves around each tribe having a totemic god figure, typically, though not always, an animal god of some type, which is served and represented by various lesser and related spirits, which are a bit like angels in Christianity. They're not the same as the god that they serve, but they represent their interests and they're on the same page as their god. Our characters call upon one of these lesser totem spirits of our tribe's god to meet us and to essentially make a pact with us where we commit ourselves to its service in return for being shown around town to get a lay of the land and be shown where we could do the most good in our god's name. In character, this was our character's way of making a good impression on the local spirits of our tribe. Out of character, this was us giving Trebor the opportunity to throw whatever plot hooks he wanted at us in order to catch us up with the big narrative he'd promised existed. The spirit in question was called Mother Rat, which was basically the most caring, nurturing, and protective version of the rat god that our tribe served. We made our pact and were brought into the spirit world version of the city, whereupon we were led immediately into the most corrupt and dangerous area of the region. Almost immediately, our characters were assailed by this corrupt wyvern spirit, who swooped down out of the sky and bit Dan and Brent's characters once each, and then flew away into the air where we could not follow. Mother Rat immediately fled the scene, leaving us entirely without guidance or help. We were told that at this point, where those bites were made, there was a rapidly spreading corruption of the flesh, and that where this corruption spread, Dan and Brent's characters lost control of their own bodies. We were in essence told that if this corruption spread across their entire bodies, that would be it for them, and they would just be these mindless monsters and effectively dead. For all intents and purposes, he'd inflicted a one-hit kill on the two of them in the first round of the first combat and the first session of the campaign. My character leads them out of this spirit world back into the physical world where they emerge in the middle of the city. Despite our characters having been created at a much lower level than standard character creation, my character did have a ritual he could perform simply called the Rite of Cleansing, which I reasoned might reverse this process. We break into the first unoccupied building I can find, a warehouse, so I can hastily start the rite and maybe, just maybe, save their lives. As I start the rite, we're told that the corrupted portions of their bodies start thrashing around and doing everything they can to interfere with the rite. I try securing them, tying them up, etc., but absolutely nothing works. So we all agree the only thing to do is for my character to beat theirs into unconsciousness so I can complete the rite and save their lives. And I proceed to do so. Great. Now the two of them are essentially out of the game without any agency whatsoever. I really hate this and tell Trebor I want to rush through this and get them back on their feet. Not so fast though, our characters were spotted breaking in, and here's some cops to investigate the property crime. My character tries to evade them without luck, tries to subdue them without luck, and winds up having to kill them simply because my packmates are about to die and I don't have time to do anything slowly. Great. So I tried to start the rite again, and miracle of miracles, I managed to complete it. I'm told that the corruption begins to recede, but the two of them are going to be unconscious for hours. My character simply lacks any means of waking them up, and Trebor isn't willing to be flexible with the rules and let me splash some like water on their faces to wake them up or anything. The rules say that after being beaten into unconsciousness, you're out for hours, and that's how it's gonna be. It's at this point the full police SWAT team arrives on site to investigate the last known location of the two cops that had gone missing. It's at this point that I'm thinking, okay, darkest hour, here comes the Deus Ex Machina, where Mother Rat finds some way to swoop in and save us from certain doom after abandoning us earlier. But no, it was not to be. My character, unwilling to betray his secret werewolf nature before so many police with body cams and such, was forced to allow himself to be beaten into unconsciousness and subdued. He and his packmates are taken into custody. We're told that we wake up in an interrogation room. Not a police interrogation room, mind, but one hosted by like the Men in Black, or the lore-specific version of that, the Theocracy. After a brutal interrogation, we're gassed into unconsciousness and then told that our characters are executed in their sleep. In total, after these several hours which Trebor had us spend making our characters, we got to actually play them for about 4 hours. And for Dan and Brent, about 2 of those hours were spent with their characters unconscious, having been essentially defeated and taken out of action the first round, the first combat we saw. At this point, I had to ask Trebor, what was the point of all this? How does any of this serve the story that you've got going? Having our characters show up and immediately be killed out of the sight of the rest of the characters who would logically never even know what happened to us. He then gave me the most infuriating answer possible. He shrugged, smirked, and said, well, here's the thing, there really isn't any story. As though I was a fool to have ever believed otherwise. He was just flying by the seat of his pants without any advanced planning of any kind, and was without any narrative structure, despite his initial exasperated assurances that there absolutely was. Naturally, when he asked us about creating new characters for the next game session, we took a pass. Ah yes, good old hostile GMing, which, from what I can tell, is way worse in LARP. Look, deadly LARPs with frequent character death, I think that can work. I've seen it work. Momo O'Brien, who's been on this channel a few times, she did a LARP that was horror-based, and her character died, as did most of the other characters, and she had a really good time because she went in with the expectation that that was probably going to happen. This well-done horror story was probably not going to have a happy ending, so she understood that her character might kick the bucket. Here, however, we have a GM who orders his players to do X amount of work to even join the game in the first place, just to murder their characters in one of the lamest ways possible. Keeping in mind that they had costumes and such, like there was actually money invested into creating these characters, and the GM just kills them off without any regard. Very lame. However, I am kind of curious, is this like a LARP mixed with tabletop? Like, how does that work? Is like the spirit world part of the game a tabletop game, and the parts in the real world, are those like the live action LARP parts of the game? If you've played in a werewolf LARP of this type, sound off in the comments. I am kind of curious how this works. This takes place in a homebrew campaign that took place on the Sword Coast, with a mix of canon Sword Coast locations and homebrew settlements that focuses around the player Blurf. Blurf was playing a Firbolg paladin from this homebrew city built within a patch of migrating trees. He was a Oath of the Crown paladin, which is meant to, you know, swear himself to the ideals of civilization and serving the society they're sworn to. Blurf was sworn to the ranks of the Bark Guardians, the defenders of his city, while he himself was sworn to the god Ilmater, the suffering god of compassion and the persecuted. All this to say, he was built to be a very lawful good character. Played by the wrong player, he could even be lawful stupid, but this paladin was unfortunately played by Blurf. With hindsight, there were a few other events that were red flags to the big event. He tried to pressure a magic item shop to give him a free weapon using his association with the Bark Guardians. He demanded a large payment from an orphanage to solve their contaminated water issue in a small village, and got very angry when they couldn't offer much money. He wanted to kill a child cleric who was healing someone they were battling despite the child not attacking the party, and was mad when the party told him not to do that. This all to say, how Blurf played was not really in line with his character and his oath in God, and while I, to a degree, think that alignment is more of a guideline, when you're completely flying in the face of everything your character is supposed to stand for, it's an issue. So I warned him that he needs to start playing in line with his character, otherwise he's gonna break his oath and piss his God off. Blurf seemed to take this to his head and started being less, well, asshole-ish until a few months later. Blurf had started to become a bit flaky with sessions. Sometimes he'd be late with little to no communication or would outright just miss sessions. Turns out that Blurf was trying to go to bars and get a hookup. He said he was depressed and thought, in his words, pleasures of the female peach could perk— oh my god. Unsurprisingly, he wasn't doing too well. He wasn't the most charismatic person and seemed to assume that appearance is all that matters, and was mad. Real incel energy was starting to form. This all came to a head when in one session, the party had caught a thief in Waterdeep. The thief was a young woman and the party headed back to the guild hall they were working for to turn the thief over to the authorities. Blurf was tasked with keeping an eye on her since he had the grappler and sentinel feet, so it would be pretty hard for her to escape. Blurf decided to use this opportunity to slip away from the party with the girl and rolled high on his stealth, and the rest of the party did not have a particularly good passive perception. I asked Blurf what he was planning to do, and he told me he was going to take the woman into an alley and— we began the video with bullshit. We end it with bullshit too. I told him he can't do that, not only because, you know, gross, but also because that's an overtly evil act that goes against everything his character is supposed to stand for. Blurf responds that's actually perfectly in line with Oath of the Crown, since he is dedicated to serving society and law and order, and the thief broke the law and must be punished, rather than get into an argument about how she was on her way to be arrested and get into topics of proportional punishments, because I knew that wouldn't change his mind. I let this play out, and trust me, I had a plan. As Blurf takes the thief into the alley to punish her, I interrupted him to describe how he begins to hear the sound of dragging feet and groans of pain coming from around the corner. An avatar of Ilmater appeared. In a calm and even voice, he told the woman that everything would be okay with a warm smile, and then turned to Blurf, and his smile quickly faded away. Ilmater started chastising Blurf for his horrible deed, and how dare he claim to be a devotee of compassion and do something so awful. Not listening to Blurf's attempts to justify himself and blame the woman, I don't think he said this exactly, but it was a real "she's a temptress, she was asking for it" kind of thing. Ilmater casts imprisonment on Blurf and traps him in a demi-plane labyrinth that he could not escape from. Blurf was pissed, but I was not interested in listening. I swiftly kicked, banned, and blocked him. TLDR, Crown Paladin and devotee of Ilmater thought that someone as punishment was lawful good and in line with his oath. As a result, an avatar of Ilmater appears and imprisons Paladin in a demi-plane labyrinth. Player is kicked out and blocked. Somehow, this is not the worst thing we've read, but it's still really, really bad in terms of things we've read this month. I do think that this is definitely either up there or, yeah, the worst. This does absolutely suck. Personally, I'm skipping the whole demi-plane thing. I established right in session 0 what is okay and not okay in my games, and if you break that in such a horrible way, you're out. Full stop. The red flags that this guy cited earlier, while they were bad, they did not set up what was about to happen. Like, those were bad red flags. The orphanage thing, the pressuring the magic shop thing, like, those were kind of rough, but they did not prepare me for the climax of this story. Holy shit. The real red flag was the peaches line. If somebody said that, if those words came out of someone's mouth, I am not confident I could continue interacting with them on a normal basis. Good lord. Okay, and that's where we're going to end today's episode of RPG Horror Stories. If you guys enjoyed, then please do leave a like. If you want to see more of my content, then you can check out our Q&A series where I answer your questions in a rambly, unscripted format while playing some video games. And while you're there in the cards, subscribe to Crispy's Tavern and get more of our content right as it comes out. And finally, if you want to leave your own stories or thoughts, go down to the comments down below. If you can't think of a comment, leave the comment. Just stop to let me know you made it to the end of the video. In essence, like, comment, subscribe. I will see you all next time. Farewell.